Hello and welcome to YourTown from the Monterey Peninsula. I'm Thomas Hood, and we appreciate your joining us for our conversation today. I've been looking forward to our next guest. As a frequent visitor to Big Sur, my knowledge of it just kind of barely scratches the surface. So today I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation with Dana Carnazzo, Director of Hospitality at the Big Sur Lodge. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have to say, when we ask you for the requisite bio, and you sent over what looks to be like a treatment for a screenplay, it was such an amazing story that I don't know if we can get through all of it. But
well, it's the purpose of my life is to gather experiences, so I worked on it.
This is sort of a cribbing here. I'm going to be cribbed with a script here. But what I really want to get to know a little bit about your background is you talk about yourself as coming from a background of travel, food, and adventure. And then in the very first paragraph, when we were talking about your life, you're talking about sailing the California coast, Hawaii and Mexico, and then splitting your time growing up between Monterey and Big Sur. Tell me what that was like between those two communities.
Well, they were both incredibly wonderful and fun. I mean, spending your weekends sailing out on the bay, which of course half the time you wished you were home with your friends, but so it goes. And then being able to sail to Mexico and to Hawaii and to do all that with your family. And then to be able to go live in Big Sur with your dad and run around the canyon with all your little brothers and sisters. It was a magical, beautiful childhood.
Well, your words were you describe yourself as a feral child in Big Sur and a sailor in Monterey.
Children in Big Sur, children in Big Sur tend to go back to nature pretty quickly. They need to get
well,
dirty.
You're in it every day.
You're in it every day. You're let loose to go run in the canyon and climb up the trees and climb up the mountains and create hidey holes underneath redwood trees, and yeah, it's pretty magnificent.
Well, I think this first photo coming up here is when you were living in Big Sur, and tell us about the animal in this photograph.
Well,
here's Big Sur now.
Well, here's my garden now. And this is my garden up on top of a mountain in Big Sur. I live over behind Bixby Bridge. And my husband and I bought this land in 1989. The day we got home from our honeymoon, we bought the land, got pregnant. I started my business, and we just got on with it. So
20 years later.
20 years
You're
later.
almost done with the house?
The house is almost done. Garden is beautiful, and there you go. And I even brought these from the garden just to give you a nice little smell of Big Sur, of beautiful herbs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, I think we've got a shot here taken a while back about this animal. Now, tell me about this.
This is
There's a story here.
On Alf the Sacred Burro, and he was our donkey. And my claim to fame is that I've gone to bed with Jack Kerouac. However, I was about this age, and I would go down to the house where he was riding Big Sur, and I would climb up, and I would open his eyelids and get him to get up and make me some oatmeal. And so I was always a wanderer as a child. And this is the donkey that he featured in Big Sur, Alf the Sacred Burro. And he was a wonderful, good old donkey. We finally had to give him to the Forest Service because he'd go up to Bixby Bridge and climb on top of tourist cars.
So you go from riding a burro in Big Sur, and then you end up in British Columbia, cooking on a giant wood stove, and something about the walk-in.
Well,
for this is it wasn't a restaurant. What was it?
It was a fly-in fishing lodge, and so I was 17 or 18, and I kind of needed, as one often does at that age, to kind of get away from home and go do something else. So I was up in northern Idaho, and my dad called and said, "Hey, I'm up here at this lodge. They need a cook." I thought, "Well, I could do that." So I had just
and you're 17 years old or something?
So I had just enough money to get to the biggest town near there, which was very small. And then I hitchhiked on a bush plane out to the lodge, got dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and I thought, oh, good Lord, what have I done? So I got picked up, and I went in, and there's this giant wood stove, and I asked where they keep the food, and it's down some stairs. The walk-in is actually in the permafrost. So I learned a lot quickly, and it was a great experience, but I
Something
just
tells
had to
me
do it.
Riding a burro to go see Jack Kerouac, indirectly living in the wild, seeing that permafrost walk-in cooler probably wasn't that big a shock. Or
No,
let's
it
put it this
wasn't
way,
that
you
big.
were adaptable.
No, I would just thought, okay, must learn, will do.
Let's see, you couldn't come from suburban Chicago and be dropped in northern Idaho and just kind of
No.
go, oh yeah, I can do this?
No, you couldn't.
Well, you got dropped in again where you're down in St. Lucie in the West Indies.
Well, I'm up there at this lodge in
happened
the
then?
middle of Canada, 200-mile dirt road to any town, and I get a telegram because that's just how old I am. And it said, diving operation, need your assistance, we'll send airfare. I'm like, end of the season, let's go. So I go down, I get dropped off in this tiny little airstrip. It was before St. Lucia was anything. It was just a little shack on an airstrip. And I'm taken to a little rowboat and rowed out to this big, beautiful, old, rotting schooner in the harbor. And it's like a Somerset Maugham story. You know, there's the captain's wife who's mainline Philadelphia. He's crotchety old Welshman who she met on a trip up the Amazon with her husband and consequently left him. Anyway, so I got to work on that boat for a while, and then I met a guy. This happens to 19-year-old girls in the Caribbean, and we bought an old lifeboat. And I don't know if we can go to that picture.
I think we've got a picture of this
of the lifeboat
boat here.
We might.
The boat coming up here.
Anyway, this guy says to me, hey, how'd you like to sail the Caribbean with me on a small boat? And I'm imagining a cute little boat with a cabin and
That's the number
cocktails.
right there?
And this is a boat called Little John.
Okay.
So it was just a lifeboat. And what we did is we put a fiberglass and roving deck on it. We went out to the scrapyard in St. Lucia, got a mast, or got some poles and made a mast. We put a keel on it, and we sailed it 3,000 miles.
Is there a connection here? I mean, there's a pattern emerging here that is just going to continue as we finish our conversation. That, from my perspective as a suburbanite, I apologize for
That's
that.
all right.
And other than camping down there twice a year, having the tools and the self-reliance to be able to live down in Big Sur today or back in the day, and then go up and deal with a fridge in a permafrost layer, and then take a rowboat and turn it into a sailboat and sail around the Caribbean. There's a lot of do-it-yourself with self-reliance here that seems to be a trait. Is that common among people in Big Sur?
Is very common, especially among the women. Sorry, gentlemen. Women in Big Sur seem to be particularly capable. The men are too, but there is the image of the really capable Big Sur woman. But not only can they run a chainsaw and dig a hole, they're also well versed in what we call the feminine arts. You'll find most women in Big Sur are really good cooks and gardeners and seamstresses, and you know, there's a really good balance.
I haven't heard that phrase feminine arts, I think, since grade school.
Well, yes.
There used to be books about that in the
Yeah,
library.
yeah.
Okay, so drop you in Alaska, drop you in the Caribbean. You can handle that. But then you went on to work as a merchant mariner, and you were in seismic boats in Alaska?
Well, I left, how did it all go? I left the Caribbean, or we left the Caribbean. We sailed our little boat to Miami. We bought an old station wagon, traveled across the country, came out to California, and helped rebuild a big, beautiful yacht, a big, beautiful double-ended Norwegian ketch. So after then spending a couple years in the South Pacific, we came back to California, and I've got, what?
I think I was in Iowa when you were in the South Pacific. I'm not
What
sure.
can I do? And so consequently, what was that next thing I did? I can't remember.
You went to Alaska and the Gulf
Oh,
of
yeah.
Mexico, and
So-
it's something about
so
much. You learned so much from the good old boys.
I did. Well, some of it wasn't so great. But so anyway, I continued on my seafaring ways, and I cooked on seismic boats, oil rigs, and I'd work 56 days on and 28 days off. And 56 days for a Big Sur California woman to spend with a bunch of Texan men. ... Fine, but when someone says, well, my mama taught me you never let a woman tie up a boat. I'm like, But
But you were seasoned by then. You'd basically been all over the planet.
I've been all over the planet, but I had never been in that sort of Trump-style Middle America. So that was a whole new thing for me. I didn't know these people existed. So it was a big learning experience for me, but I learned a lot of really great regional American cooking. I had a lot of great stories, and when you stay at sea for 56 days, everybody acts like a sailor when they get to shore. So there's more stories there that shall not be told.
Okay, so now it starts to come full circle as in all those experiences, and you're cooking in all these different places, that's its own version of hospitality, whether it's on a yacht or on a seismic boat.
Yeah.
So then you come back onto the Monterey Peninsula, and here you are, and you start this hugely successful catering company, which kind of starts to get to where you are today. Right?
It does. And so I come back here, and I look at my watch, and it says, oh my gosh, you're in your 30s. Maybe it's time to find a good man, buy some land, have some children, and get going. Mm-hmm. So I did that. And check. And then I started my company with, always with a baby in the backpack or under the fruit and cheese table. Right. And then I had to learn a new thing, which is it's like being dropped off in the woods, how to run a business. There's people who have love for what they do all over the place with failed businesses. Mm-hmm. And so loving what you do is completely separate from running a business. And so to do both of those things was very difficult. And I had to learn a lot really fast.
Well, moving from basically being a kind of a mobile entrepreneur with all these different jobs, growing up in Big Sur, that gives you a spirit of, I'm going to say, self-reliance, adventure, solve the problem, you call it the feminine arts. So now you're back and you're working for a corporation after working for an eccentric yacht owner and God knows what else, right? All these other stories. But you don't have a walk-in cooler in the permafrost in Big Sur.
No, but you mean where I am now at Big Sur Lodge?
Yeah.
That's another thing of getting dropped off in the wilderness. I went and I sold my company. I worked for the people for a couple of years, got it up and running, and then I thought, okay, now I'm ready. So I interview with this big corporation. It's called Guest Services, and they run lodges all over the United States. It's like the Curry Company in Yosemite or something. Mm-hmm. So there's a process for everything. Mm-hmm. So I'm dropped in here as my entrepreneurial self, and it's not that I've had to squash it, but I have really had to learn this concept of the process.
Right.
It's not always easy.
Okay. In the community down in Big Sur, which I understand is 900 people or something like that, permanent residents, is there a mix of people down there that have done similar experiences? I mean, the people there is important, obviously, as the incredible scenery and all their stories and that history. It seems to be very present when you go down there. Do you find now coming back there that you have that sense of history today at Big Sur Lodge?
I most definitely do. And I'm able. One thing I wanted to do, I spent, my 20 years getting married, having children, building a business, and just go. Mm-hmm. I wanted to become part of my community. Well, so that's what's...
Let's take a look at this next image up here and tell me how this may have changed to what's going on today. Oh, there you are.
Well, I'm still just as beautiful.
Summer of Love.
There you go. That's taken at the Monterey Pop Festival. And another place I got dropped off for a few days when I was 14. And the day it ended, I got on a plane and flew with my mom to Europe. But that's another story. So... So we're kind of jumping around here.
I thought this was Big Sur until I looked at the plans.
This is the Caribbean. We lived on we had different deserted islands all over the place where we like to camp and live, and deserted areas. So we would sail our little boat right up to the beach. We would unload. We'd create a camp. And this is our favorite. It was underneath a beautiful sea grape tree on Petit St. Nevis near St. Vincent in the Caribbean.
Now, for years in Big Sur, people live the same way down there, didn't they?
Some people still
Tents
do.
And teepees,
I don't know. That's neither here nor there. Well, what a little cutie pie. This is me getting ready to walk to Big Sur from the crossroads. So if you look behind me where that little pine tree is, that's where Starbucks is now and Safeway back behind there.
Sure.
And so this was the day that my sister and I walked from the crossroads to Bixby Canyon.
A mere 25 miles. Okay, now, here we are,
well,
present day, last summer.
I started work at the lodge on a Monday. The fire started on a Friday, and I had to go home. And the fires are right there. This is our backyard. They had just cut down. The firefighters came. They cut down my entire garden. I've been growing for 20 years, but it was necessary. And took everything down to the dirt. And we moved things out of our house. My kids helped fight fire at other people's houses. And it was... Our house didn't burn down, so it was a really wonderful experience for our family, working together to keep everything safe and to keep our neighbors safe.
Let's take a look at this next one. Now, what's happened since the fire, and what's it like being down at Big Sur Lodge now?
It's very quiet. It's Big Sur is very quiet because there was the fire, then the floods, and we think next maybe be a plague of locusts. I don't know, but so a lot of big weddings that are happening further into Big Sur have been canceled, and we're bringing a lot of those to the lodge. So we're injecting that whole new level of service and style.
Well, I can imagine as we're getting to know each other that your history and your spirit and your travels are going back into what you're now referring to as homestead dining.
Yes, and
Tell us about homestead dining.
Rene Robles, who's the general manager there, first brought this up to me, and that was his idea of where we wanted to go with the lodge, and I love it because we're an iconic lodge, the best loved lodge. That's what we call ourselves, in the middle of a state park, and so we don't need to be post ranch or anything. We want to do good, down to earth food that's. You start with something great, you treat it simply, and you end up with something wonderful. So,
well, in your story that you describe of imagine going back in time where you come down in a wagon from Big Sur, you come to Pfeiffer Lodge, and Florence Pfeiffer cooks you dinner.
And that's where we're going. And we have a wonderful new chef, Gary Core, and he said he's going to be, who was with Flo in that movie? Flo and Mel? Was that?
I think so.
Yeah, anyway, he said I can be Flo, he'll be Mel. So he and I are working together on developing a lot of new wonderful things. He's already built a smoker. He's been smoking, curing and smoking all of our own bacon and just some really good things.
So you're open for business.
Big Sur is open for business.
You've got a smoker.
Big Sur Lodge is open for business. We spent the summer remodeling each and every one of our rooms. I mean, from floor to ceiling, new flooring, new paint, new furniture, new everything. So we're there, and we just want to educate the public that it's not scary to come to Big Sur. It's beautiful with all the rain, the fires, and then the rains. It's lush, and the colors are just saturated. It's beautiful.
Erin Lee Gaffel commented on a fire several years ago, and she said it was the gallery fire, and she put up a posting on Facebook talking about the beauty of it after the fire. And she immediately went out and started painting. And from Nepenthe, she said she could look up and you could just see life just bursting forth out of the ground almost instantaneously. And Michael Troutman had shots right at the end of the fire.
That's right. That's right. And the fires came right down to behind the employee lodging at the lodge. I mean, right there. And you look up on the mountain and it's just covered with poppies.
Well, when we think about Big Sur, it's not only nature, but there really is the overwhelming sense of the histories of the place and the histories of all the people, you're being one of them. And when I think about Big Sur now is the events we've seen in the last year with the fires, and the fire and the mudslides, they've occurred since
throughout
time
history.
Throughout history.
There's more of us, so it affects more of us when it happens. So Big Sur is completely open from Monterey down to Big Sur, and everything in the valley is open and welcoming. And it really is not very much of a drive to zip around Highway 1 over to 46 down in Paso Robles to hit Highway 1 again down there.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate your coming by, telling us what's going on down in Big Sur, telling a little bit about your story.
Thank
Dana,
you so much.
You've been watching YourTown today with Dana Carnazzo. I'm Thomas Hood. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great job.